what is your name and where are you from?
I'm Sarah. I'm from Italy.
Okay. And what is your connection to tea, Sarah, from Italy?
So it's going to be a bit of like, we might have heard it a lot, but the first time I used to drink tea was at my grandma's. The reason behind that, though, is because my mom, she's from Belgium and she didn't drink espresso, which is the thing that is commonly served to guests in Italy. So as an alternative, my grandma, like my mother-in-law to my mom, she would make tea and she would always have Earl Grey. And then I hated it. I would put like a lot of sugar inside because it didn't taste right to me. And I was much more interested in the box of like Danish cookies that for once wasn't filled with sewing material, but actual cookies. So that's the first memory of tea I have. Then when I was in high school, I was like, I didn't drink a lot of tea I didn't drink a lot of coffee. So tea was kind of the alternative, but it was more like herbal tea, like chamomile. Again, I didn't really like the taste. Then when I moved to university, I was in the UK and like, that's when I actually started drinking tea a bit more intensely because we would have game nights with my friends. And as soon as somebody was like doing the movement of like clapping the hands on the knee and starting to go, I would be like, oh, but I just put the kettle on. So it was like an excuse to like stay longer and talk like over a cup of tea. And then jump in time on my third year of university, I was an exchange student here in Japan. And again, we started drinking like tea as a way of like just commensality, like just to spend time together. And of course, we were drinking Japanese tea. And at the time, I also started a class offered by the university of Urasenke Sado. So that was my first approach to tea ceremony. And then I moved back to Italy and I started drinking Japanese tea because I was missing Japan. And it was like a way of connecting to that. And until I arrived at my last year of studying, when I studied for my master degree, I was interested in supply chains of agricultural food. And I was also interested in Japan. I wanted to study something that somehow will reconnect me to Japan. And at the same time, my best friend started drinking tea and started being interested in like loose leaf tea and gonfucha. So every time we would meet, he would like do tea with his little guy one and so on for me and our other friend. And and that's when I realized, wait, Japan produces tea, so that could be a very interesting research topic. And from there, I started interviewing people that were drinking tea. So the topic of I was interested in the whole supply chain, but I only had like a couple of months to actually do my study and write my dissertation. So I only focused on the consumption side. So it was basically, the title was something like experiencing the leaves at the end of their journey, something like that. So I started like interviewing tea aficionados. And at the time it was COVID time. So I couldn't interview them in person, but at the same time, in anthropology, particularly in visual anthropology, there is this idea that what you need to take note of is not just what the other person is saying, but also the things around that can be perceived with senses. And of course, on Zoom, that was a little bit difficult. So drinking tea at the same time as the person I was interviewing was my way of like putting a bit of like, what's the word for it? Like sensoriality in a way, reality to what was like otherwise a very plain like Zoom room. And then that's when I started actually drinking tea, and then I never came back. So that's a little bit of what my relationship with tea has been throughout the years before getting to Obubu.
So that's like from day dot up until you went to Obubu as an intern.
Mm-hmm.
And you were an intern during spring of 2023.
Yes.
And you were here. You were here around the same time as Jean.
Yes, Jean arrived around halfway through my internship.
Mm-hmm.
Because a bit less than that. My internship started around the 6th of March, and he arrived around the 30th of March. So, yeah.
So then after that, you did your internship, and during your internship, you applied for the assistant manager role. And now we're on your last day at Obubu.
Yeah.
So without getting into all the details of everything that's gone on during that time, more like from an overview, how has your opinion of tea changed from before you came to Obubu, either as an intern or assistant manager, to today, your last day at Obubu?
I think there is one thing in which Obubu really had an impact in my relationship with tea, is like getting to see how many people have different view of like on tea in general, but how to drink it, how to enjoy it, and so on. I came to the conclusion that tea is freedom, as I like to say in during tea tour. I think coming from like getting to tea from a kind of book background, you get to see it in a very specific way of like, this is good, this is not good, this is the right way of doing it, this is not the right way of doing it. And instead, here, everybody has a different way of enjoying tea. Everybody has a different connection with tea. Everybody has different opinion on what is a good tea and what is not. So without entering into the science, but I figured that generally speaking, there's not like a good or right answer to that. And finally, tea, in a way, the ultimate quality of tea is that it brings people together. And if we get stuck into this is good and this is not, you should do this and not that, then we lose that quality of tea of like bringing us together. So I think that like if I didn't come to Obubu, it would have probably gone in a completely different direction. Instead, luckily, by being here, I'm like, tea is freedom.
Tea is freedom. That's a good one. I like it. So, can you apply the tea is freedom like way of thinking to any part of tea, or does it begin with something? Does it begin with farming? Does it begin with tea brewing and not having rules and regulations to adhere to? Like, where does it begin with you? Tea is freedom.
So I think thinking about Obubu, it does start with farming in a way, because many teas that now we have as like our characteristic tea, they started as like an experiment, like the Black Gyokuro. So definitely it can be applied to any stages. I do think there are kind of boundaries in a way, but that also depends like on person to person and on the personal values. For example, a tea that is not sustainable for the people that make it, in that case, I'm a bit less likely to say tea is freedom, if that makes sense. But going back to the Obubu environment, then definitely anybody can have like we saw that when we were making black tea. There's not one of the black tea that we made this year that was a bad tea, like, and everybody did things in a completely different way, and we all started from the same leaves, and still everybody got to different but beautiful results. So yeah, it's for every stages in a way.
Tea is freedom. Love it. Love it. Okay, so I would then like to ask, what is your favorite tea? Where do you drink it? And who are you with?
I'm gonna answer the same way I answered during my interview, like the interview as an intern, which is like, it depends. I don't like the favorite tea depends on, it's like songs. There is a song that reminds you of something, and a song that you will listen in a certain context, and it's the same with tea for me. Like Black Gyokuro reminds me of Jan because we were processing it together with Hiro-san when I was an intern. Scent of the Earth, I would say, is probably my favorite Obubu tea because it's the first one that I got to harvest with Aki-san. In terms of like flavor, I think my, like speaking in absolute, if we have to, I would say probably white tea, aged white tea. I really like the flavor profile. It's probably, this goes back to when I was interviewing people during my dissertation. I was interviewing this person that was sharing how pu'er reminds them of the, like walking in the woods with his grandfather, who recently passed away. It was COVID time. And I also recently lost my grandma. And I was drinking this aged white tea that remind me of like this bergamot notes of the Earl Grey. So in the middle of the interview, I just started crying together with the person I was interviewing. So that's probably, because like taste is also associated with memory and so on. So that's probably why aged white tea always bring me to a very like quiet place. It seems a bit too metaphorical in this, but that's...
No, I totally understand. One of the teas that made me really fall in love with tea, I ordered it from a tea house in London when I wanted to know a little bit more about tea. And it was, I think, Thai Guanyin. Not a tea I really drink very often now, but at that time I hadn't had a tea which has lots of aromatics in the cup. And after I brewed it, and I didn't brew it particularly well, I can imagine, but I brewed it and I smelt it, and it immediately like took me to this place where I could imagine this room when I was on holiday with my family one time, and I could see everything in the room, and it was like unbelievable because all the aromas like matched the same aromas of like the flowers and the sea breeze, and like I just was taken to this place, and I could see it all in my mind, and I'd never had that before. And once you have something like that, it's incredibly shocking, but in a really nice way. Like it's discovering a new way to travel down memories through scent and through tea. And like if you have an experience like that, and especially if you have a close connection with somebody else through some aromas that can be found in teas, I think it's an incredibly touching thing. So tea is freedom of the mind.
It's like the Proustian Madeleine, the unwanted flow of memories that you're not even aware they're there.
But they're there.
And tea is... It's quite funny because like when I started drinking tea with my friend, and he would drink this very like good teas, every time he was very good at pinpointing the notes. It's like, oh, this is like chestnut, and this is... And for me, it was like, this evokes, and I would bring up this whole like fantasy scenario of like an afternoon on the seaside. And it was... I think that's something that I really, really attract me about tea, the evocative power, which sometimes I kind of forget because like now we're drinking tea every day and in many different contexts. So it's nice to be reminded of that.
So now it's easy sometimes to like forget some of the things that, you know, you fell in love with tea because of this reason. And when you're working in tea and you get to work in tea every day, it's super fun, but you also are not doing the things which led you to tea in the first place quite often. So it can kind of overshadow in a way those things, not in a bad way, but like there's just less room in like your tea like experience day to day for things like that, and it's it's nice to be reminded. It's nice to travel back down those things sometimes. So, at the weekends, like opening a tea I haven't had in ages, just to sit down and just to enjoy the tea. Really taking the time to brew carefully and enjoy those flavor profiles is nice. Oh, so good. Right, let's change up a little bit.
Okay.
And not all of these questions are tea related. Okay. So we're going to go with some other stuff. So let's do, what is the book or books you've given most as a gift and why? Or, so you can answer that one, but sometimes people don't really give me book gifts. I feel like you may have. But if you haven't, what are 1 to 3 books that have greatly influenced your life?
I don't think I give books as present because it's very hard to make, like, I'm always like second guess myself on whether the person is gonna read that and enjoy it. And I think books are very personal. So the only time I remember giving a book as a present was like we went to watch a movie. We went out and my friend said, I want to read the book from which the movie was based. And then I was sure they would have enjoyed it. In terms of book that have influenced me, that's a tough one. Going back to when I was a teenager, I think La Nausée by Sartre, which I would probably not enjoy now, but at the time, and I remember reading it and feeling things in my like bringing those things in my daily life, those kind of like scenario and those. I don't really remember very much of that, but I remember it having a deep impact on my, I guess, existential pessimism in a way. And that's why I'm like, I would probably not enjoy it nowadays.
I don't know about this book. Could you give me a quick synopsis?
That's the thing. I don't remember much. It's basically this guy going around the city, and I remember this one scene of like, it's deeply rooted in Sartre philosophy, which I would lie if I said I remember something about it. But there is this scene in which this guy starts seeing like this root of a tree and start feeling the existence coming out of the tree. And he has this kind of loss of consciousness. And again, I don't really remember the details. I just remember this very strong... why did I put myself in this?
Don't worry. I mean, we can... Yeah, I can have a Google and have a look at it later. It's fine, but...
I just remember this guy being very unhappy and wondering about existence. And I think it was the time in which I was also wondering about existence and what are we here for. And there were many things about myself that I got to discover only later. So I think I was like attaching myself to books and to kind of find my way.
Or discovering yourself through reading.
Yes. There is this... that's the time in which I decided to study anthropology, because there is this Latin... It's actually a writer of comedy that used to say homo sum, humani nil, a me alienum puto, something like that, which is like, I'm human and nothing not human I consider alien to me. And in this way I was like, oh, I'm like, we're all kind of connected with people from the past and people for the future, because at the core we're all human. And so I would search for answer in literature in that sense, and then that led me then to study anthropology, and wanting to find out more on what actually is to be human, only to end up with the conclusion that I don't really know. There's so many ways of answering that. So anyway, that book, and then books I have been reading recently. I don't really have a title, but there's mainly like authors that I always end up in the bookshop and find myself with a bunch of those, which is usually Japanese authors or South American authors. I don't know why. Every time I go in the library being like, I'm going to get something different, but I always end up with a novel, either of South American. So like Isabel Allende, I really enjoy her way of telling like a story, or like a personal story, but then putting in historical context. Italian author that did the same on the history in the 60s, 70s, 80s in Italy is Elena Ferrante. And then I really like the crime novels from Matsumoto Seicho, who writes about like very mysterious crimes, but also it describes a little bit of like Japanese society in a certain time of history, which I found very, very interesting. So that's the genre. I don't know how much they impacted me, but recently I found book as a way of a bit escaping rather than learning. I think I left that. I mean, learning through escaping in a way. I left the rest to my teenage years. I had a bit too much.
Fair enough. So let's switch back to tea for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the enjoyment of tea that a lot of people find is teaware or tea paraphernalia. And I know you enjoy it. So this is not a comment on that. It's fine. Everybody loves nice teaware that's nice for them, right? Me, I am 100% in that boat. And as are a lot of people. So what I want to ask is, what is a tea-related purchase of around $100, euros, pounds, like 15,000 yen, something like that, more or less, that you've enjoyed in the last 6 months or in recent memory? If you can give details such as recommendations of the shop name that you got it from, or the tea shop, or what kind of thing it is, website, that would be great.
I do have my favorite teapot, but I'm just thinking about the
budget wise.
Yeah. I'm not. I don't remember because I got it last year in Tokoname.
Go for it, Sharon. If you think it's not quite there on the budget and it's either way, then maybe we can have a second thing as well.
Actually, there's two of them. One is definitely in that one budget. They're both teaware from Isobe in Tokoname, in which like it's a shop in which they do kind of collect and put together teaware from different potter from the town. So in one, like the second teaware, it's basically a small kyuzu that in which the glaze, it's unglazed inside, but it has glaze on the outside, and the glaze kind of has the sunset colors because it goes from pink, like a very small hue of pink, to light blue. And then on a second trip to Tokoname, I was in another shop and I found like teacups that were part of that. And as I was going to the till to pay, the lady next to the till that was talking with the owner of the shop was like, "Oh, thank you so much! I made these." So I got to meet the artist just by chance. That was so cute, and she was so happy, and I was so happy, and it was such a nice moment. And I really like this one teapot because so every time I go to Tokoname, I'm like, I should get a teapot in the traditional Tokoname style, which is like the unglazed clay. And another typical thing from Tokoname is like the seaweed that is put on top of the teaware before putting it in the kiln, so that it leaves this very like kind of bronze or gold like designs made by the seaweed burning. So every time I'm like, I should get that. And then every time I fall in love with a different teapot. So this was one of the two. And I really like the colors because it reminds me of the when I was an intern, we went to Ise with my senpai and my co-intern, and we were at the shrine, in which is very characteristic because there are the rocks on the sea, and we saw this sunset that had basically the same color as the teapot, which like going from pink to blue. So it kind of reminds me of that.
That's so cool.
So yeah, I couldn't, and that's
a pretty nice
ended up with that teapot. And the other one that I'm not sure it's within that budget is like this round teapot. So it's in a like Western teapot kind of, well, not even, more like Chinese teapot kind of shape. But like the glaze is kind of holographic. It's like purple. It's so beautiful. And it's like round and it just looks so nice. It feels like I want to kind of cuddle it. That's very stupid, but and inside is also unglazed and it's like Tokoname clay. I didn't get to meet the potter for that, but it's very, very cute and kind of like I wasn't expecting that. And then I saw it and I was like, wow. And that's my favorite teapot. It's like purple, but then when you put it in the light, it has kind of this metallic view, so it looks like it's changing color.
Yeah, Nina. Well, two very nice things there, but both teapots.
Both teapots, yeah.
Would you say teapots are one of your favorite pieces of teaware, or the thing you're drawn to most, or?
I think so, but I also really like cups, and I really like to give cups as a gift because I like the idea of like when the person is drinking tea from that cup is gonna think of me. And like with Jean and Jan, my co-intern, we have like the same cup, so that every time it's like we're drinking tea together. It's like creating tea times together, even if we're like miles apart. So
that's a bit too nice. That's
a bit
lovely.
Cheesy.
That is very nice though, to be able to do that like from miles and miles away, to have an online tea session and you're all using the same cups. That's very sweet.
We did it only once.
Only once. Oh,
like on Zoom or something like that.
Yeah. Well, soon you'll be in Europe. So I'm sure it'll be Jean has to go to Europe, right?
At some point, yes.
Because you'll be hanging out there and Jean is only around the corner, kind of. More or less, closer to now anyway.
Yeah.
So that would be cool.
Yeah, there is already some movement in the group chat in that sense.
Good.
Hopefully, yeah.
I like to hear it. Okay, so let's switch things up a little bit again. Yes. And how has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? Could be an investment of money, time, energy, anything.
When I graduated during COVID, I had no idea what to do. I started working in a hotel because I wanted to stay in London and I wanted to stay in England. Then I left the job, I went back home, and that's when I started to feel like I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, and that's probably the period in which I was like paralyzed by the fear of failure. I remember in November 2022, I did send the application for the internship, but I was not going to. I just did it being like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm going to do it because I've been thinking about this for so long, but I didn't really, I did put the right amount of effort because it's still an application, but I submitted it and I'm like, I'm going to forget about this. And now I'm here.
After 1 year, 3 months.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that's the best example I have so far.
It's a pretty good example. because that really changed your life for a long period of time.
I mean, if I probably didn't leave my job, if I didn't go back home, I would have probably kept postponing it for who knows how long. So,
good job you applied. And considering how much I saw Jean trying to persuade you to apply for the assistant manager role, I'm impressed. I'm impressed you put in the application. You just put yourself and just do it.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I remember that evening. I was like, I put it on my calendar much in advance, and I was like, I did it just because past me had decided I wanted to do it, but that day I really wasn't going to. So yeah, good thing.
Type 2 fun.
Type 2 fun, I guess.
Not fun at the time, but afterwards you're pretty glad you did it.
It was more like I was very much paralyzed. Like everything was feeling extremely hard in that time. Was a bit lost, but then past, like thinking about past me and respecting past me that already took the decision, I still did it anyway. So yeah, I don't want to think what would have happened if I didn't.
Life would have been very different for all of us. We would never have met you. And, I think Jean and Jan would be heartbroken if they suddenly had not met Sarah. And everybody here, would never have had the chance to meet you. It would have been awful. So I'm very glad that a month prior, Sarah decided you wanted to apply for it, and then on the day, Sarah decided to follow through the plan even though you didn't want to. So, good job.
Thank you. I guess.
Okay, right. Okay. How often are you drinking tea per day or per week? I mean, I think it's per day, but what is your most regularly drunk tea?
I think here at Obubu, I mainly drink tea at work, so it's sencha. And if I get to choose, unshaded sencha, because that's my favorite type. I think because basically that's most I'm doing, just being here in the office. Otherwise, outside of Obubu, so then I have to think about before, because like I think on the weekend sometimes I drink coffee just for a change. Oopsie.
Shock.
But otherwise, I would drink a lot of like Chinese oolongs, white teas, usually Chinese white teas. And I don't often drink coffee. Sometimes if I feel super fancy in the morning, I will make chai, like with milk.
Oh, wow.
And spices. So that's something
that's cool.
I do enjoy. And a lot of sugar, but...
What a tasty drink.
Yeah, that's why it depends. Like when it feels like a fancy Sunday, then I will do that.
How much tea would you say you drink a day?
I have no idea. I drink enough tea to the point that when I go to the field without having had tea, I realize, like, I start feeling a little bit weak until we have the tea break, and then I start feeling super energetic, and that's when I realize I haven't drank tea this morning. So I don't know how to quantify that, but it seems...
I think it's called an addiction. Well, I think anybody at Obubu, if we don't have tea in the morning, I think all of us are missing something for sure. And until we have had tea, I think we all feel a bit weird. So, but, day to day at Obubu, whether you want to drink tea, like whether you're looking to drink tea and making time to drink tea or not, there's always somebody brewing.
Mm-hmm.
There's always somebody offering you a cup of tea. There's tea tastings. There's, let's drink, we need to test this tea and see what it's like, or we want to check the stock or something. So, like day to day at Obubu, it's hard to not have a cup of tea in a day. At least 2 to 3, maybe. So.
And it's hard to quantify because sometimes, like, for example, today I was just in the office doing some content work, and just like always turn to my cup and it was always refilled. So I don't know how many cups I drank.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough. Okay, what are some bad recommendations you hear people giving about tea?
Sorry, can you say that again?
What are some bad recommendations you hear some people giving about tea?
I think everything that starts with, or you must, or you have to, that's usually something I always like. I don't particularly appreciate, because at the end we want to enjoy tea, and having to do things takes out the enjoyment, as I was sharing before. So yeah, that's tea is freedom.
Tea is freedom. I mean, you're staying close to the message here. This is good. Okay, let's change it up. Non-tea question.
Mm-hmm.
What is an unusual habit or strange thing that you enjoy?
I like waving at people when I see them on, like, outside. Like whenever I see interns or staff around Obubu, I just enjoy waving like it's the first time I see them in 10 months. That's something I really enjoy doing. And I remember it was, I think, the first or second week, and I meet Pao and I start waving. It probably doesn't realize I was waving at him. And then I see him again and I'm like, please wave back when I wave at you. And then flash forward to like 4 or 5 months later, I am lost in my thoughts. I'm just walking and there's Pao that is waving so much and I don't see him. And then he's like, please wave back. So that's some funny waving situation.
Well, fair enough. It's that's a very nice thing as well. We had some people say some other funny things before. We had one person who liked to read restaurant menus, and just to see the ingredients that they used.
Okay.
And they found enjoyment in that.
Okay.
Which was very different and interesting. I would never ever have thought of at all. So everybody has very different things when they answer this question. So it's waving at people is quite a nice one. So good job. When somebody wants to dive headfirst into tea for an extensive education, what books, courses, or experiences would you recommend?
I don't think I do know enough to be able to recommend, but what I found very useful was, I'm not sure it's in English, but it's in Spanish and Italian, and it's the Manual of the Tea Sommelier, which has some very wide informations on type of tea producing method, tea producing regions. So that was one of my first steps. And I found it it's like comprehensive, but also it's quite comprehensive, I think. And it's like approachable from somebody that knows nothing about tea. So that's definitely one. Yeah. Because then the others are more like on history, but then it becomes a little bit more specific. So if interested in tea history, then there's a lot, like, again, starting from the basics. I think it's like the history of tea from Saberi, and then from there going a little bit more in depth. There is a book from Italian tea lady that she wrote, Obubu is also figured in there, and it's like La finestra sul tè e La finestra sul Giappone, which is the windows on tea and the window on Japan. And in the window on Japan, it's from Nicoletta too, which is an amazing Italian tea lady. And in the window on Japan, there's also like pictures from Obubu, and Aki-san is in there. So I was like, oh yeah, I know them. So this would be my tea recommendation.
Tea recommendations. Super. Thank you very much. I have maybe 3 more questions for you. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
5 years? Oh, that's so difficult. Can you say that again? Sorry.
No problem. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Okay. I think, because like 5 years, I started studying anthropology, so there's quite a few probably, but in general, like deconstructing social constructs, like authenticity, like the idea of like authenticity, like things like this constant research for authenticity, something that probably I did have, for example, as a tourist, and then realizing that this is something that has been constructed. And like if we think about national cuisines, they started appearing in a certain time and in certain very specific socio-historical context. For example, the national cuisine in France started in the period between the 2 wars, as a response to the uncertainty of the nation, because that's when like the nation and the big states started crumbling, the biggest empire. So the birth of national cuisine was like a way of like creating a sort of security and creating a form of nationalism. So I think realizing how things that we give for granted and that we believe in, like authenticity, is something that actually is not given, is not there, but something that we constructed in specific social historical context. And that has helped me approaching things with a much more much more relaxed way. Like I won't fight over what's the best way of cooking carbonara, because there's no such thing. Everybody should do that the way they like it and they want it. So that's my answer to that.
That's awesome. I had no idea about that for like national cuisine. That's really interesting. I think I'll have to look more into this because that's really fascinating.
I have a few papers on that. That's the example of France, but it comes with pretty much everything. There is recently a book, I haven't read it yet, that was released in Italy about the birth of Italian national cuisine and Italian traditional recipes, that shows how, for example, don't quote me on that, but I think Parmesan was actually born in America, the way we know it now. So there's so many little things that...
The drama.
Yeah, exactly. And people literally fight over these things. So, yeah.
Right, if there's anything that you can provide, for people to read, then I can put links and stuff.
Sure.
At the end of an article for people to read, because that would be really interesting.
I did write about it on my blog. It's in Italian, but the Google Translate is okayish, and there's the bibliography there as well, so it's very easy to find.
I will link to the blog.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, last 2 questions. Yes. What are some problems you see in the tea industry right now? And if you could change one thing, what would it be?
I think sustainability in terms of like people. It's not hidden that in some tea producing region, particularly like the end of the supply chain is meaning the farmers or the pickers are not living the supply chain is kind of the agency across the supply chain is more on one side and not on the people that are actually producing and making the tea. And so that's definitely something that should change in a way. It might end up in an increased cost of tea, because one of the reasons why pluckers and farmers are not paid a lot is to keep the prices low, but there's also like a lot of waste of food in general, and I'm assuming probably tea as well. Again, don't have data on that. So kind of re-equilibration, rebalancing of the supply chain is something that, well, I do wish for the future, but it also goes across with many other issues.
This is kind of putting you on the spot, but would you have a suggestion for how to help rebalance?
Well, increasing, and again, it's not fair for me to say because I'm saying this as an outsider. I've never been to like my only approach to the tea supply chain in terms of production is in Japan. But I think there was recently it's been a year, data on like Kenyan tea fields. So I haven't been there. I don't have the knowledge to be able to make a suggestion that is actually useful and makes sense. But for sure, increasing the livelihood and the state of livelihood of the people producing the tea and the farmers, that shouldn't even be something to discuss about. It should be something to give for granted. So that's, and if that involves an increase in the cost of tea, well, yeah, that's, there is, okay, can I dive into something? Okay, so one of the founder of anthropology of food is Sydney Mintz, who basically is writing on how in like during colonial time, it writes mainly about sugar, but the same applies to tea. Sugar was like produced in the colonies by slaves, and it was produced in large quantity, and it was imported in the West. And he gives the example of England because it was a cheap way to keep the workers working in the factory. And the same goes with coffee and tea, because they're like products that don't give calories, but they do give energy. And so it increased the productivity. So it basically writes on how exploitation in the colonies is associated with the exploitation on the in the homeland. So that's why it's like something like the issue that we see now in the supply chain are not new issues, and that's why probably it's hard to suggest an end or to see their ending. But it has to, like, not sure how, and that's why I was saying there's many factors going on. But yeah, that's sweetness and power. Sydney Mintz. That's what I'm referring to, just to give more context to the things I was saying. And that's the book that got me into supply chains and then tea. And
yeah, I think, or trying to see it from like the day-to-day stuff that I do is in a first world country, working at a tea farm in a first world country, which is not typically a very normal place to find a tea farm. You know, normally we're looking to developing countries when we're looking at tea production, but in Japan we're able to see what it looks like when tea works in a first world economy. And the price of tea is very high and it costs a lot of money, but it also means that the people that are buying the tea, it costs people more, and it's not quite, it doesn't have the same ease of access that other products do. So, or other tea from other countries does. So like when you look at tea, like if somebody wants a really nice matcha, for example, they would easily pay maybe £15, euros, easily for 25 grams of a ceremonial matcha. If you're outside of Japan, you're looking at maybe double that. And that is a lot of money if you are not somebody who's already really committed and into tea on a day-to-day or weekly basis, and you're happy to spend that income that you have on something like that. So it kind of builds a barrier to entry. Also, you don't find so many people who found Japanese tea first unless they're already in quite a wealthy category of people. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I think the Japanese tea is benefiting from other people finding their way to Japanese tea through other cheaper sources. And eventually they come across Japanese tea, they taste it, they enjoy it. And then it's also paired with Japan being a first world country where people love to go on holiday here. And it's a very different culture to the cultures that are in the West, but it's still quite accessible for a lot of people. So I think the Japanese tea economy is also benefiting from that for the international export that's going on.
Yeah.
So I think it's this problem has so many different ways to look at it. But I always felt, since I'd been to India and Nepal, that there has to be a model much like the renegade tea farmers in Georgia, also like Obubu here in Japan, where you have a small group of people that are doing the farming side, but also are transparently providing tea to consumers around the world. And doing it that way around, you're able to make sure that the people who are growing and maintaining the tea are still able to earn a good living, whilst also providing the clarity that's needed for customers to be happy to pay a certain price. Because for the customer to pay a certain price, if they're in a supermarket looking at 2 boxes of tea, there has to be some differentiator. Because if there isn't, they'll go, well, why would I pay more for this box of tea when this box of tea looks identical? So we have to be able to have a differentiator in there somehow. And I think it is in the clarity and the story and the understanding that when somebody spends money on a tea that's more expensive, they know what it's going towards. They can see the enterprise it's going towards. And I think this is a general trend in business today. People want to do that more. So I think it's something that's can be taken and can be a model to use in other places too, for the benefit of those communities. But it's tricky. There's long established ways of doing things. It takes a lot of time and effort of people who are committed to a certain area to help that area be able to continue their tea production, but at the same time make a living. You then have the switch problem when a community starts benefiting from those things, becoming more affluent. They send their children to schools in other places, and then their children move to those places. They get jobs in those places, and they don't come back, and nobody farms the tea. So then we lose the tea farmers, and we don't get to enjoy that tea anymore. So this problem has several stages, and it is a life cycle. And yes, we have to do something about it 100%. But I think one of the really tricky things is how to make sure that people can continuously enjoy tea farming. That one I don't know.
I wanted to say 2 things. One referred to when I was talking about the price of tea that might increase, in which case I just wanted to clarify that I do agree that, just wanted to underline that I was talking more of a rebalancing of the supply chain, and I don't think that all of the weight of the decision should be on the consumers and the tea customers. Just a little, just to clarify that part. Regarding what we were just saying now, I really like Obubu in that sense, because this is something Hiro-san shared once. It was not coming from a family of tea farmer, we think that as long as you love tea, you can be a tea farmer. And as we see, there are many people that even for a short period, they want to be tea farmer and help contributing. So that could, like that so far is an option. How that can work on the larger scale of the, like all of the tea producing countries, that's, of course, it's very tricky.
I did think maybe if we started having smaller tea farmers that have their own kind of branding about them as tea farmers, they could be like they could be a type of middleman, which is like a Eurovision Song Contest, where you're able to have lots of different farmers introduce their teas, and it's an opportunity for everybody to introduce their different teas and make it a show that people enjoy. And you're able to market teas in a really fun way that's fair for all the people that are part of that community or that event. And that's a way of being able to promote all of these individuals in a way where there could be somebody supporting them with some of the infrastructure that's quite difficult to do as a single tea farmer. The example I often think of is, could you imagine Aki-san alone doing all of the farming he already does, packing the teas, marketing the teas abroad, shipping the teas abroad, and managing all of those relations?
Yeah.
I think it would be really tough. And if I think about putting myself in that position, it would be impossible, because you're harvesting almost every day in springtime when people want to place orders of tea. So do I either harvest the tea at the right time, or do I not harvest the tea at the right time and ship what tea I harvested before to customers? Like you're having to make these kind of choices. So being able to work as a small unit of people, I think, is a really good way to do things. So making sure that there's enough people in each brand of farmers that are able to have these different skills. And some of the skills, I think, could be taken by a member of a community or an geographic area where they support with shipping solutions or something. And this would mean that you could have some of those things that benefit from larger organization like shipping. It's going to be cheaper for everybody if we ship in bulk. Then it's going to lower costs for farmers. They're going to have a bit more profit because of that. And it's going to be more simple for consumers too. So this kind of ecosystem, if we can create a beautiful model of that somewhere and then introduce that to other rural areas, I think it could be a recipe for success.
It also helps promoting the whole tea producing region as a thing and creating a sort of like geographical distinctive area.
Like a brand name for that area. Like we have Ujicha. Why can't we have something else for another area that's super remote? Like
it's a bit of what Ikedoki is trying to do.
Oh, definitely. They've got Higashi Sonogicha, which is super delicious. And they're promoting all of the farmers in that area too. But they also are working on promoting other goods as well from that area and other services. Mata-san is running a local site with the help of the town that is promoting every single business in that area.
Okay.
So there's a long list of record of all the different businesses and contact details as well. So as a local person, you can go onto the website, I need blah, blah, blah service, and you can find a local service. So very cool stuff. So having something like this in different remote locations, I think, would be super beneficial for the people in that area. But it also requires somebody like Mata-san's committed himself first to moving to Wazuka, second to moving to Higashi Sonogi in Nagasaki. So it takes somebody who's willing to commit a decade to moving to a very remote location and bringing up, helping lift a community to be able to build the systems that they can support themselves. So it's not It's not an easy thing to do. It takes a big commitment.
Yeah.
But I wonder whether there's a way that we could have a bigger organization where we can bring in this knowledge more easily, so it's not reliant on one person. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've done a lot more talking than I intended to do.
That's very interesting, and yeah, definitely something to think about. Just on a side note, like being in Wazuka made me a bit more attached to my hometown, which is an agricultural hometown. And yeah, this whole discussion is like, I wonder whether what I'm learning here could also be beneficial there.
Why not?
No, sorry.
Well, you could replace tea with something else, right?
Yeah.
Any products from a remote agricultural area, and you can use the same model, and it would help people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if you do that, you can introduce something you're interested in to the local people as well. So I know you wanted to bring tea to your area.
Yeah, but it has to be connected to there in a way.
I meant like if you built that community network, it's more easy. Not necessarily part of the same organization, but you can also bring tea in.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Definitely.
Okay, one last question. This is a very difficult one. If you could have a billboard anywhere, enormous billboard, like a massive sign, huge sign, and this message would reach millions or billions of people, what would it say and why? It can be a couple of words, it could be a paragraph, it can be someone else's quote, something you like to live your life by, something you want to share with others.
That's a very hard question, because it assumes that I have wisdom to share, which I'm not sure I'm the right person. You
definitely have wisdom to share.
I can't think of like a very catchy phrase, but I think it would be like an invitation to be kind, to not assume people's intention, and to like give the benefit of doubt, and to try to communicate as much as possible, and that is freedom, which kind of like implies all of this. Like, I know it's like I'm not saying it too much as a joke, because finally the idea behind is that there is not a right way or a wrong way to do tea, but also things in general. So yeah, that would be my invitation. There's not right or wrong. There's ways of getting to solution altogether, and I think that's what I would write on my massive billboard. And then I would write a lot of puns on the side, just because I enjoy them.
What is your favorite pun? I've got to ask you that now.
Oh, I think the whole oolong time is quite funny. But the one I'm most proud of is, how would you rate your tea from 1 to 10 cha? Although got stolen by Pau, but
wow. For me, when someone steals your joke, it was a good one.
Yeah.
No one steals my jokes.
It's okay. I think I'm pretty sure they were.
There's a few here and there, but it's that's a really nice message to have on a billboard. So nice. Is there anything you would like to add, mention? Anything you would like to say to tea people or people in general?
Well, every story of connection to tea is very special. And it's always like something that begins and you don't know where it's gonna end and it's gonna bring you. So I think my message would be, keep drinking tea and enjoying it the way you like it, and be transported into this journey, and be curious, and Yeah, and I think it's more a reminder to myself, probably. Yeah.
That's a wonderful way to finish. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
It's been really lovely. So
Thank you.
it's been very good fun. Let's continue to enjoy tea together.
Yes.
And have many tea adventures.
Of course, yes.
Arigato.
Thank you.